Does the soul linger here after death? Or does it leave the instant our heart stops? For thousands of years, entire civilizations, religions, and philosophers have wrestled with this question. Some say the soul hovers for days. Others insist it departs instantly, while many claim it roams among us far longer than we realize. The truth has sparked fear, rituals, and entire traditions across human history. And the answer might completely change the way you think about life, death, and what comes next. Death is the one experience every single human being will face. And yet what happens after remains one of the deepest mysteries of existence. Across cultures, across generations, people have asked the same haunting question. Where does the soul go? And how long does it stay here? Some traditions picture the soul floating above the body, watching the living mourn. Others describe it being carried instantly into another world, while some claim it lingers among family, waiting for prayers or rituals to guide it forward. The fact that such different answers exist tells us something important. This question matters. It has mattered enough to inspire tombs, scriptures, ceremonies, and debates stretching back thousands of years. In this video, we're diving into those ideas, not just to list them, but to explore how they shaped the way people lived and how they faced death. You'll see how Egyptians believed the soul needed food and offerings to continue its journey, how Greeks imagined guides leading it to the underworld, how Christians and Muslims debated its waiting place, and how Eastern traditions counted precise days before rebirth. We'll also look at modern accounts, near-death experiences, and the enduring mystery that ties all of it together. What you'll discover might challenge what you thought you knew, but it will also show how deeply connected we all are in our search for answers. So as we start, hold this question close. If your soul continues after your body is gone, how would you want it to be remembered? And how long do you believe it stays near the world you leave behind? For the ancient Egyptians, the soul was not a simple, single thing. They believed it had different parts, most famously the ka and the ba. The ka was like a life force, a spiritual double that stayed near the body. The ba, on the other hand, was the personality, the part that could move freely between the world of the living and the dead. After death, they imagined the ba flying out of the tomb during the day and returning at night, almost like a bird visiting its loved ones before coming back to rest. This idea explains why their burial practices were so detailed. They didn't see death as an end, but as a new stage where the soul still needed care. Tombs were stocked with food, water, treasures, and even servants carved into little figurines to work for the soul in the afterlife. If the ka was not fed with offerings, it would suffer, and so families visited graves to keep their loved ones nourished in spirit. The Egyptians also believed in a final test. The soul would stand before Osiris, the god of the afterlife, and have its heart weighed against the feather of truth. If the heart was light, the soul entered eternal peace. If it was heavy with sin, it was devoured by a monstrous creature, ending its existence forever. But notice something important here. The journey did not happen instantly. The soul was thought to linger around the body, dependent on the living's rituals, before it could move on. This lingering presence meant that for Egyptians, death tied the living and the dead together. The living were responsible for helping the dead continue their journey, and the dead were never entirely gone as long as their ka and ba remained connected to the earthly world. The Greeks saw the soul in yet another way, and their stories are some of the most vivid in all of history. For them, death was not an end, but a passage into Hades, the shadowy underworld where all souls eventually went. It didn't matter if you were a farmer, a king, or a hero. The soul had to make the same journey. According to their beliefs, Hermes, the messenger god, would guide the dead to the banks of the river Styx, where Charon, the ferryman, demanded payment. That's why the Greeks placed coins on the eyes or in the mouths of the dead, so the soul wouldn't be stranded without a way across. But not everyone agreed on what happened to the soul after this crossing. Philosophers like Plato argued that the soul was eternal, that it existed before birth and would continue after death, perhaps even taking on a new body. He described the soul as something trapped in the body, longing for release into a higher, purer existence. In contrast, others believed the underworld was simply where the soul wandered forever, a shadow of its former self, neither fully alive nor fully gone. The Romans inherited much of this worldview, blending it with their own traditions. They believed in manes, spirits of the dead who lingered and sometimes needed to be appeased. That's why they held festivals like Parentalia, where families honored their ancestors with food and wine, convinced that neglected souls could become restless and even vengeful. What all of this shows is that in Greek and Roman thought, the soul did not instantly vanish. It either traveled under divine guidance to its place of rest or remained nearby, depending on whether the proper rites were performed. In their eyes, the boundary between the living and the dead was thin, and the soul's fate was shaped by both divine order and human duty. In Jewish thought, the question of the soul's fate after death has always been layered with both mystery and debate. The Hebrew scriptures describe Sheol, a shadowy realm of the dead, but they do not paint it as a place of punishment or reward. Instead, it was often imagined as a quiet, dim place where souls rested, waiting for something more. Later writings and rabbinic traditions added more detail. Some rabbis taught that the soul hovers near the body for 3 days, reluctant to leave before beginning its journey. This belief was tied to the idea that the body was still recognizable for a short time, and that the soul might linger in sorrow until it fully accepted death. Jewish customs around mourning reflect this sense of closeness. The practice of sitting Shiva, a 7-day period of mourning, is not only for the comfort of the living, but is also seen as a way of honoring the soul as it transitions. The recitation of the Kaddish prayer, repeated over months, carries the idea that the soul continues to be lifted by the prayers of the community. Some mystical traditions, especially in Kabbalah, go further, suggesting that the soul moves through stages, ascending levels of purification before reaching its final rest with God. There is also the hope of resurrection woven throughout Jewish history. The prophets spoke of a day when God would raise the dead, when souls would be restored to their bodies and live again. This future promise meant that even though the soul departed, it was never fully cut off from the world of the living. The Jewish view holds both immediacy and patience. The soul may linger for a short while. It may rest in Sheol. It may ascend through stages. And ultimately, it awaits a final reunion with its body in the world to come. This variety of perspectives shows that even within one faith, the mystery of how long the soul walks the earth has never had a single answer, only a spectrum of hope, waiting, and faith. In Christianity, the question of how long the soul remains on earth after death has sparked centuries of conversation and even disagreement. The New Testament gives us one of the clearest, but also most debated lines. To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. Many Christians have taken this to mean that the moment a believer dies, their soul is instantly in God's presence. Yet others point to passages that suggest a kind of waiting period, a sleep of the soul until the day of resurrection. This tension between immediacy and waiting has shaped countless sermons, writings, and even art through the centuries. In the early church, figures like Augustine and Aquinas wrestled with these questions. Augustine emphasized that souls are judged immediately after death, entering either peace with God or separation from Him. Later, Catholic tradition developed the doctrine of purgatory, a state where souls undergo purification before entering heaven. This gave rise to the idea that the dead remain connected to earth through the prayers and masses offered for them. Families would request prayers, light candles, and dedicate offerings, believing these acts could shorten the time their loved ones' souls spent in purification. Protestant traditions, which broke from many Catholic teachings, rejected purgatory and emphasized instead the immediate presence of the soul with God or its separation. Still, even here, the imagery of soul sleep appeared in some branches, suggesting that souls rest unconsciously until the final resurrection. The Orthodox Church, on the other hand, has long taught that the soul undergoes a journey of trials and encounters with angels and demons within the first 40 days after death, a belief that connects with the recurring theme of the soul lingering for a significant period before reaching its eternal destination. What emerges from all these perspectives is that Christianity has never had a single, universally agreed answer. Instead, it has held a wide spectrum: instant entrance into God's presence, a time of waiting or purification, or a journey lasting days before final judgment. For believers, this mystery has not lessened faith but deepened it, creating practices of prayer, remembrance, and hope that continue to this day. In Islam, the journey of the soul after death is described in vivid and often sobering detail. The soul does not vanish instantly, but enters what is called barzakh, an intermediate state between death and the day of resurrection. In this stage, the soul remains aware, waiting for the final judgment, yet separated from the living by a barrier that cannot be crossed. Islamic tradition teaches that when a person dies, two angels known as Munkar and Nakir visit the grave and question the soul. They ask about the person's faith, their deeds, and their devotion to God. The answers determine whether the soul experiences peace and comfort in barzakh or a state of distress while awaiting the day of judgment. This belief shapes the practices of mourning and burial in Islam. Families recite prayers, give charity in the name of the deceased, and read the Quran to offer spiritual benefit. It is often believed that these acts can ease the soul's condition in barzakh. The soul's link to earth is not a wandering presence in the same sense as some other traditions, but rather a continued awareness, an existence where the soul still feels connected to what it left behind. Different schools of thought within Islam add detail. Some traditions speak of the soul hovering close to the body for a short period, even witnessing its own burial. Others emphasize that the soul is taken up by angels almost immediately, yet remains in barzakh until the trumpet of resurrection is sounded. The Quran itself speaks of the barrier that prevents souls from returning to the living, but also of a life after death that is real and active. For Muslims, then, the question of how long the soul stays on earth is answered not with an exact number of days, but with the understanding of an in-between stage. The soul continues to exist, aware, waiting, and its fate is deeply tied to both its deeds in life and the prayers of those it leaves behind. This belief gives both urgency to how one lives and comfort in knowing that death is not silence but a stage in the larger journey toward eternity. In Hinduism, the soul, or Atman, is seen as eternal and indestructible. Death is not the end of the soul, but only a transition from one body to another, a step in the endless cycle of samsara, or rebirth. The question then is how long the soul lingers between one life and the next. Hindu traditions do not give a single, fixed answer, but many texts and rituals suggest that the soul stays connected to the earthly world for a period before moving on. Some believe this period lasts 10 to 12 days, during which the soul hovers near the body and remains dependent on the prayers and offerings of the family. This is why rituals like Shraddha and the Antyeshti, or last rites, are so central. In these ceremonies, family members light the funeral pyre, chant mantras, and offer food and water to help the soul on its journey. The Garuda Purana, a text often read at funerals, describes the soul's journey after death in great detail, including encounters with messengers of Yama, the god of death, who guides it toward judgment. For Hindus, these rites are not symbolic. They are considered real acts that provide strength to the soul, protecting it as it crosses into the next phase. Some branches of Hindu thought hold that the soul remains in a transitional state for 40 days before rebirth, while others describe a period of up to a year in which the soul is supported by ongoing prayers. Rebirth itself depends on karma, the accumulated weight of one's actions in previous lives. A soul with great merit may move quickly into a favorable rebirth, while one burdened with negative karma may take longer or enter a lower form of existence. What is striking in Hinduism is how deeply connected the fate of the soul is to the living. The family's rituals are not just acts of memory, but acts of power, influencing the path of the departed. The soul lingers long enough for its ties to the world to be honored and for karma to determine its next destination, reminding the living that how they act in this life echoes beyond their death. In Buddhism, the journey of the soul, or more precisely consciousness, is described in a way that is both intricate and deeply symbolic. Buddhists generally avoid the word soul, since the teaching emphasizes anatta, or no permanent self, but they do speak of a stream of consciousness that continues after death. This consciousness does not disappear immediately, but passes through what is called the bardo, an intermediate state between death and rebirth. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes this stage in detail, teaching that the consciousness may remain in the bardo for up to 49 days. During this period, it is said to experience visions, trials, and encounters that reflect both the purity and the impurities of its own mind. Family members and monks perform rituals and chant prayers during these days to help guide the consciousness toward a favorable rebirth. They believe that these chants can calm the fear and confusion of the soul, opening the way for liberation or at least a better next life. In Tibetan tradition, the first 7 days are considered especially critical, with ceremonies repeated weekly until the 49 days are completed. The number 49 itself is not random. It reflects the Buddhist emphasis on cycles of 7, seen as spiritually significant stages of transformation. Other Buddhist traditions, such as those in Southeast Asia, may describe the process differently. Some suggest that rebirth happens almost immediately after death, while others acknowledge a short interval where the consciousness lingers. Even within Buddhism, then, the timing is not uniform. What is common, however, is the understanding that the state of mind at the moment of death strongly influences what happens next. A peaceful, mindful death leads to a smoother transition, while fear and attachment can make the bardo experience more difficult. In all of this, the Buddhist view emphasizes that the length of time is less about earthly days and more about the inner journey of consciousness. Whether it is immediate or drawn out over weeks, the soul's lingering is seen not as a punishment, but as an opportunity, a chance for release, clarity, and the possibility of moving closer to enlightenment. Among indigenous and tribal cultures, the idea of the soul staying close to the earth is often woven into the fabric of daily life, rituals, and community memory. Many Native American traditions, for example, teach that the soul lingers for a time after death, watching over loved ones, or preparing to move into the spirit world. Some tribes believe the soul remains for 4 days before crossing a bridge or path to the next life. During this period, families perform ceremonies light fires, and sing songs to guide the spirit safely on its way. The rituals are not only for the dead, but also for the living, reminding them that their ancestors are still near, listening and offering strength. In parts of Africa, similar beliefs appear in practices that honor ancestors. The soul of the deceased is not seen as gone, but as present, continuing to protect the family and community. Offerings of food, drink, or symbolic gifts are made at grave sites or family shrines. In some traditions, the spirit is thought to stay near for weeks, and if rituals are neglected, it may become restless or even cause misfortune. The line between the living and the dead is thin, and the well-being of both depends on respect and remembrance. Pacific Islander cultures also hold strong beliefs about lingering spirits. In places like Samoa or Hawaii, it is often said that spirits of the recently dead walk among the living, sometimes appearing in dreams or signs to let loved ones know they are still present. Families hold gatherings and chant prayers to send the soul peacefully on its journey, preventing it from becoming trapped between worlds. These traditions, though different in detail, share a common thread. The soul does not depart instantly. It remains near long enough to be honored, guided, and remembered. For indigenous peoples, the soul's journey is a communal experience, not just an individual one. Death binds the living and the dead together, creating a sense of responsibility. To care for the departed is to care for the whole community, ensuring that souls continue to walk with peace rather than unrest. During the medieval period, the question of how long the soul lingered after death took on a vivid and often fearful shape. This was an age when religion and folklore blended together, creating a world where ghosts and wandering souls were part of everyday imagination. The church taught about purgatory, a place where souls underwent cleansing before entering heaven. This meant that souls were not gone immediately, but could remain in a state of waiting, deeply tied to the prayers and actions of the living. Masses for the dead, pilgrimages and offerings were seen as ways to shorten this time and bring comfort to those in purgatory. At the same time, popular belief held that not all souls moved peacefully into the next life. Many people feared the possibility of restless spirits, especially if someone died suddenly, violently, or without proper burial rites. Stories spread of ghosts wandering near graveyards, haunting villages, or appearing to relatives in need of prayers. These tales were not dismissed as mere superstition. They reinforced the belief that the soul could linger, sometimes trapped between worlds, until justice was done or rituals were completed. The medieval mindset also gave rise to customs meant to protect the living and guide the dead. Bells were rung at funerals to drive away evil spirits, candles were placed to light the way for the soul, and graves were blessed to ensure peace. The 40 days after death became especially important in many Christian communities, reflecting the belief that the soul remained close during this period before moving on. Pilgrims would visit holy sites and offer prayers during these days, convinced that their efforts could ease the soul's passage. This combination of theology and folklore created a powerful atmosphere. People lived with a constant awareness that death was near, and that the soul's fate was not sealed in an instant. Whether through purgatory, restless wandering, or the prayers of the faithful, the medieval world saw the souls lingering as both a hope and a danger, a time when the unseen world felt closest to the living. In modern times, the debate over how long the soul stays on earth has not disappeared. It has simply taken on new forms. Science has tried to explain what older generations called the soul in terms of brain activity and consciousness. Researchers have studied what happens at the moment of death, measuring electrical activity and the shutting down of body systems. Yet even with all of this, there remain stories that science struggles to explain. Near-death experiences, for example, are reported by thousands of people across cultures. They describe leaving their bodies, watching doctors operate on them, or seeing loved ones who had already passed away. Many claim these experiences prove that something, the soul, awareness, consciousness, continues beyond the body, even if just for a brief time. Doctors like Raymond Moody and other researchers have collected hundreds of accounts where patients who were clinically dead for minutes reported vivid, life-changing experiences. Some describe floating above their bodies and later recounting details of the room that they could not have seen. Others speak of traveling through tunnels, encountering light, or feeling a profound peace. While skeptics argue these are products of a dying brain, many scientists admit that the sheer consistency of these stories raises questions that cannot be dismissed so easily. Beyond near-death experiences, there are countless reports of people sensing the presence of loved ones soon after death. Some describe hearing footsteps, smelling familiar scents, or even receiving dreams where the deceased offers comfort or a message. These experiences often happen in the days or weeks following a death, suggesting to many that the soul lingers nearby for a time before moving on. Even in a world dominated by technology and science, belief in the soul's continued presence remains strong. Polls show that a majority of people still believe in some form of afterlife or spiritual existence. The language has changed, but the question remains the same. Is the soul's presence after death only in our memories and emotions, or is it something real, something that has been seen, felt, and experienced across thousands of years of human history? With so many different beliefs, stories, and experiences, the problem becomes clear. How can anyone know for certain how long the soul lingers after death? One culture says a few days, another says 40, another says until rebirth, and still others insist it happens in an instant. Even within the same religion, arguments stretch across centuries. The challenge is not just about finding one answer, it's about facing the limits of what humans can know. Death is the one thing every person experiences, yet it remains hidden behind a veil no one can fully lift while alive. Part of the difficulty lies in the evidence itself. Near-death experiences are powerful, but not universal. Religious texts offer guidance, but their interpretations vary widely. Folklore tells stories of restless spirits, but skeptics dismiss these as fear or imagination. And science, for all its tools, still cannot measure the moment the soul leaves or prove that it exists at all. This leaves people caught between faith, doubt, and the deep human need to understand. The deeper challenge is emotional. Humans fear death not only because it means the end of the body, but because of the unknown. If the soul lingers, what is it doing? If it leaves immediately, where does it go? If it rests until resurrection, is it aware or unaware? Every answer offers comfort to some and unease to others. For the grieving, the idea of the soul remaining nearby can be a source of peace, as though their loved one has not completely gone. For others, the thought of a spirit trapped or waiting might bring fear instead of comfort. This is why the question has lasted for thousands of years. It is not just about timing. It is about the human heart, wrestling with loss and the hope that death is not the end. The problem is not only theological or philosophical, it is deeply personal. The mystery of how long the soul walks the earth continues to challenge us because it touches both our faith and our deepest fears. One of the most fascinating patterns across so many traditions is the number 40. It appears again and again when people talk about the soul's journey. In Orthodox Christianity, There is a strong belief that the soul spends 40 days passing through trials before it reaches its final place. Families pray and hold memorials on the 40th day, convinced that this marks the soul's transition into eternity. In Islam too, many communities hold special gatherings on the 40th day after a person's death, honoring the soul's passage through barzakh. Even in Buddhism, particularly Tibetan traditions, the soul is believed to wander through the bardo for 49 days, with prayers offered weekly, the 7th week marking the end of the soul's transition. Why 40? The number carries weight throughout human history. In the Bible, 40 is tied to testing and transformation. 40 days of rain in the flood, 40 years in the wilderness, 40 days Jesus fasted in the desert. It is a number that marks a time of trial, leading to renewal. In many ways, using 40 days to describe the soul's presence on earth reflects this symbolism. It is a time of testing, of passage, of waiting before something new begins. Folklore and cultural practices have absorbed this idea too. In Slavic traditions, it is said that the soul remains near the earth for 40 days, visiting places it loved, staying close to family, before finally departing. Families hold meals, prayers, and gatherings on the 40th day to say goodbye. Similar customs exist in parts of Africa and Asia, where the 40th day is seen as the true moment of departure. This repeated emphasis on 40 days suggests that people across the world sensed a period of transition, neither immediate nor endless. It is as if humanity collectively agreed that the soul does not vanish the moment life ends, but neither does it wander without end. The soul, they believed, needs a defined season to release its ties to earth and step fully into whatever comes next. The recurrence of 40 is more than coincidence. It reflects a universal intuition that death is a process, not just a single moment. When you gather all of these beliefs and traditions together, a striking truth begins to emerge. The question of how long the soul lingers may not be about counting hours or days at all, but about the meaning we attach to death and remembrance. Every culture, from the Egyptians with their offerings to the Greeks with their coins, from Christians praying for 40 days to Buddhists chanting through the bardo, has seen death as a transition that takes time. The numbers differ, the rituals vary, but the message is similar. The soul is not cut off instantly, and the living play a role in honoring that journey. What stands out is that these practices are not only about the dead, but about the living. When families pray, light candles, or gather on the 40th day, they are acknowledging that life and death remain connected. The soul's lingering becomes a mirror for how we face our own mortality, how we hold on to love, and how we release those we have lost. The great mystery may be less about where the soul goes, and more about how humans respond to the silence that follows death. Perhaps this is why the number of days has never been universally agreed upon. Whether it is 3 days, 40 days, or 49, the period serves as a sacred space of memory, grief, and hope. It allows time for the living to adjust, to speak their prayers, to let go, and to trust that the soul is continuing a journey they cannot yet see. The climax of this ancient debate is that the mystery itself carries meaning. If we knew the exact answer, perhaps we would stop seeking, stop honoring, stop remembering. But the uncertainty keeps us humble, reminding us that there is more beyond our control. So in the end, maybe the question of how long the soul walks the earth is not about a calendar at all. It is about the bridge between the seen and unseen, the living and the departed. The lingering soul becomes a symbol of love that refuses to vanish, of memory that outlives the body, and of a journey that reminds us life is more fragile and more eternal than we can ever fully grasp. For thousands of years, people have searched for the answer to how long the soul truly walks the earth. Some said it lingers for days, others insisted on weeks or even years, and many believed it leaves instantly. But maybe the deeper truth is that the soul's timing is not something we can measure like hours on a clock. What matters is that across every culture, every religion, and every story, the soul is seen as continuing, connected to us, remembered by us, honored through our prayers and rituals. That tells us something powerful. Death does not end relationship. Love stretches past the grave. Memory gives life beyond the body. And faith whispers that the journey is not over. The soul may not reveal to us its exact steps, but it leaves enough traces to remind us that our lives carry weight far beyond the final breath. Watch the next video on your screen now, where we go even deeper into the mysteries of life, death, and what might await us beyond.